Hello everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of Sense and Sensibility. Today we will be finishing the Sense and Sensibility book, and next we will be going on to The Great Gatsby after we watch the movie. Absolutely. Like, we're watching a movie next. We're watching the Sense and Sensibility movie that has Alan Rickman in it, and then we will be reading. We will be reading The Great Gatsby. Wow. Wonderful intro. Cold open, if you will. Not really. That's not a cold open. It's fine. You guys know what you're here for. If you're this far into the Barely Bookish podcast, you know what it's like. But yeah, that's basically all I have for you guys in the intro. We are reading The Priory of the Orange Tree in the Barely Book Club. So if you have been like kind of afraid to read it, and I get it, we will be reading it for the next 8 weeks. We're reading about 100 pages each week. Each week, we end at chapters, so like it's close to 100 pages each week, but like not exact because chapters don't always end at exactly 100 pages. But we will be reading it together, so if you've been kind of nervous about conquering that book yourself, you can join the Barely Book Club, and it's, if you go to barelybookish.com/connect, there's a link there, and then you can join us, and it's a lot of fun. And you'll have some great people to hang out with. So I really hope you'll join. But without further ado, let's get into the next episode. So now we're on to chapter 45. So Eleanor, after Willoughby leaves, is just like trying to pull all of her thoughts together. And then she goes up and sees Marianne. And Marianne seems a lot better. And then 30 minutes later, Mrs. Dashwood shows up. Like, Willoughby is lucky he left when he did, because otherwise Colonel Brandon and Willoughby would have saw each other on the road.
Yeah.
Like, that is a close encounter.
And Eleanor's been up for like a super long time. Like, this girl's just going crazy.
I know, they don't talk about her sleeping at all. Like,
she's like strung out.
I know. Like at this point, I think she's been up for like 40 hours.
I don't know if it's that long, is it?
Well, because think about it. She didn't go to sleep at all the day before. Stayed up all night.
Oh, yeah, you might be
and
right.
Now it's day 2 of her being awake. And they don't mention her napping.
At least 36, I'll give you that.
Yeah. Like, we're getting close, because once it hits midnight, then that's the 48-hour mark, and it's 10 o'clock when they show up. So she's getting close to like 48 hours. She's probably tired as all get out, and she's just like, if my mom can get here soon, that'd be great, so I can go to bed. I hope she got at least like an hour or two nap, maybe.
I mean, I'm thinking that she's at least like sitting with Marianne, but like shutting her eyes.
I hope so.
For Eleanor's sake, let's hope.
Yeah. So Mrs. Dashwood thinks that like Marianne's dead. She's like worried out of her mind. And then Eleanor knows that Mrs. Dashwood's going to jump to this conclusion. So she runs outstairs and she's like, Marianne's doing great. And her mom's like bawling her eyes out, and she's like super relieved.
She was all worried she was going to come in on her dead daughter, who is like kind of her favorite.
Kind of her favorite.
They're the most similar. Yeah.
They're like super close. So, also somehow Colonel Brandon told Mrs. Dashwood that he loves Marianne in their ride over.
Can we just like pause for a second and admire the fact of how many times people realize that Colonel Brandon loves Marianne? Like, we all already knew. Mrs. Jennings is onto it like the second that they meet. And everyone is already suspicious of it. Eleanor already knows. And then at one point she's like, oh, I think he loves her. It's like, you already knew that.
Yeah, but now Mrs. Jennings is like, oh, maybe he loves Eleanor. And I'm like, no, they're just like homies.
Yes, but you almost saw it.
I was starting to get like, I don't know if I was like persuaded, but I was nervous. Like, because everyone kept mentioning it, so I'm like, has he switched? But
the thing is they are very similar people. It is, like, with who Eleanor is and the kind of people that she likes,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be all that shocking.
I was
But it's
just
just
starting to
funny
get
how many times
nervous.
people are like, oh my goodness, I think he loves her. It's like, we've known that since like chapter 4.
I know. It was very out there from the beginning, you know. He's holding, what is that, a candle for her the entire time.
Oh yeah.
So Eleanor and her mother are talking about like Colonel Brandon and Marianne a lot. And like, I was not very clear on when Colonel Brandon had left the room. So I'm just imagining Marianne or Mrs. Dash would be like, that Colonel Brandon fella, love him for my daughter. And Colonel Brandon's just like, mm? And just like slowly scoots out of the room because he knows
I
he
feel like
probably
he
shouldn't be
doesn't
there.
even care. I don't think he cares that everyone knows. Like, he's like
Yeah,
hopelessly into her and thinks he has no shot.
I know. I kind of love that for him. Not that he has no shot, but I kind of love the fact that like he doesn't care who knows.
Yeah, no shame.
Mrs. Stashwood thinks this is the greatest match of all time. And then also says that at one point she didn't like the look in Willoughby's eyes.
And Eleanor's like, yeah, right, Mom.
Yeah. She's like, yeah, okay. I think I said that, but all right.
Oh yeah.
And then she also suggests that maybe they move to Delaford, which Eleanor's like, no, please, I don't want to do that at all. No, thank you.
No, I think that means that she thinks that Marianne is going to end up with Colonel Brandon because Delaford is where he lives.
Yeah. This is when that's when the mom was Mrs. Dashwood was saying that, and she wants Marianne and Colonel Brandon to end up together. And she was just like, oh, if they end up together, we can all move to Delaford.
Oh, okay.
Blah blah
I
blah blah.
misunderstood.
No, you're fine. So, and you know, Eleanor's just thinking that's where Lucy and Edward's gonna live. I'd rather die.
Lucy and Edward, my goodness, what a mess.
Yeah. So
And then
chapter 46.
finally, Mama Dashwood is like, Eleanor, please, for the love of all that is good in this world, get some sleep.
Yeah. And then Eleanor's like, yeah, cool. And then she just passes out, basically.
She's like, all right.
I'm going to cut this out. But you remember when Jacob stayed up for like 3 days and then saw a lion?
Yeah,
but
dude,
it was
I don't
a
believe
mailbox?
anything that man says. I don't believe anything.
I think about that all the time.
I actually do too, but it's also like, why did you do that?
I don't know. I don't know if it's true or not, but I think about it all the time.
Eleanor just like imagined this whole thing with Willoughby. She's just like so strung out and
Maybe.
tired. Strung out on all that coke.
She's getting a secondhand high. I don't know how coke works, but
not like that.
After I said that, I'm like, I think that's weed. I'm just imagining that my entire family can hear me on this podcast episode talking about cocaine, and they're like,
It's like the 5th time Rachel's brought up cocaine.
What's this book about?
Is she reading Jane Austen? Oh, also, I forgot to mention at the beginning.
Yeah.
Important announcement, folks. I am wearing Jane Austen socks that I forgot that I had. It was a really lovely constructed sentence, but
fancy.
Here, just a second. No one can see it except Rachel. But here.
Oh, those are cute.
I gotta show you the other side. There's a silhouette.
Oh, I like those. Those are cute. So, chapter 46. Marianne asks Colonel Brandon to come to the room so that she can thank him now that she's feeling better for like bringing her mom to her. And like Colonel Brandon comes in and he looks kind of distraught. And
he's Eleanor, a freaking wreck. He thinks that she's dying.
Yeah, Colonel Brandon basically is looking at Marianne right now and seeing Eliza because of they both had terrible, terrible sicknesses.
Right.
And then Mrs. Dashwood is looking at this and she's like, oh, he's distraught because he cares. Oh.
And Eleanor's like, no, it's past trauma.
Literally.
But it is kind of an interesting parallel.
Yeah. Colonel Brandon's been through it. Okay.
I love him.
No, he's pretty good. So Mrs. Dashwood wants to take the girls back to Barton, and Colonel Brandon's like, hey, you can take my carriage. Just so
take my whip, it's better.
Yeah. He's like, I got that back row. And he agrees to come visit them in a few weeks because basically Mrs. Dashwood is going to make it so that Colonel Brandon and Marianne get married.
I love how hard everyone pushes for this.
I know.
Like, it's not just mom, it's everyone.
It's every single person except Mrs. Jennings who thinks it's Eleanor and Colonel Brandon.
No, she's kind of, at some point, she gives that up. And she's
Yeah.
the same.
Later.
Even John comes around.
Yeah. We'll get there. So the girls leave and Colonel Brandon goes back to Delaford. And now that they're back, everything's kind of reminding Marianne of Willoughby, but she's like just kind of casually reminiscing at this point.
A single tear down her face as she looks out the carriage window.
She's just basically like, ah.
Yeah. I mean, fair though. She hasn't been there since he left, basically, because they pretty much went to.
I think there was like a month time frame when he left and she was still in Barton, and then.
Oh, you're right, because Lucy's there and.
Yeah.
All that. But I mean, she really hasn't been there in a long time.
Yeah, she hasn't been there in 3 months now, I think.
Well, no, they spent like 3 months at Mrs. Jennings, didn't they? Or only 2?
I thought Mrs. Jennings said 3 months altogether, but I don't know.
I don't know. They've been gone for months.
Yeah.
At this point. And
at least more than one.
Right, and leaving Cleveland took forever because oh my gosh.
Marianne
got sick. I totally blanked for a second.
So Eleanor hasn't told Marianne about Willoughby's visiting and his story, and she's really nervous to like reopen that wound. But they start taking a walk, and Marianne's just kind of reflecting on everything that happened with Willoughby and how she's gotten to this point. And then she says that she never plans to find love again and wants to concern herself solely with her family.
Can I just say at this point, my note is that Marianne has a serious Ebenezer Scrooge moment. Where she like wakes up on Christmas Day and she's like, I'm sorry for everything I've done. Eleanor, you've done so much for me. And like, I need to atone to God. And like all these, she goes through and she's like, and Mrs. Jennings, I love her.
I was just imagining, when like you get super hungover for the very first time in your life, and then you're like the day after, you're hungover for like 48 hours and you're like, I'm never drinking again. I will not even look at alcohol ever in my life again. This is like when Marianne's talking about Willoughby and she's like, I will never find love. I will just.
Oh yeah.
That's what I'm imagining. But I love your like Ebenezer Scrooge moment.
It is a Scrooge moment. Like she totally is like, I'm going to be a changed woman. I was seen by all the ghosts while I was sick, and
she's like, I will read 8 hours a day. And I'm like, yeah, sure you will, Marianne.
I will devote myself to love, charity, books, and the pianoforte.
Literally, that's all she cares about. And not all she cares about, but she's like, I'm going to be so improved, such a changed woman. No one will even recognize me next year.
But I love that. Like, she's finally, like, I mean, as terrible as it was for her to get sick, it was like a good moment for her to like flip the switch and really mature.
Yeah. So at this point, she's like, oh, I am not living up to my full potential. I could do a lot more with my life, kind of thing.
Right. And she's like, I just want to love my family on Christmas. I'm just kidding. But Christmas. Like, that is really what's happening. She's having the Christmas Day Scrooge moment.
Honestly. So Eleanor's
God bless us, everyone.
I still need to read A Christmas Carol. I've seen like the Disney version.
Which one? Like the one with Mickey Mouse or the animated one that Jim Carrey does? Because that one is creepy.
I don't think I've seen the animated one. I've seen the one where it's Scrooge McDuck.
Yes, that one's better. I haven't seen it in a long time, but the Muppets one is very good. And there's like a 1970 version called Scrooge. That's my favorite.
I can't wait till at some point I do that on the podcast. We have to decide whether we're doing Muppets. Like which version of this we get to watch is the movie part.
I feel like there's some that are more. I actually think the Disney one follows the book. I can't remember. I've read like the play, like the oh my gosh, what's it called?
Script.
Yeah, thank you. I've read the script thing before. Um, in high school. Like it was in a textbook.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. Wait, maybe not high school. I think that was actually middle school.
I'm just constantly realizing how much I'm let down by my literature teachers that didn't have us read anything, but that's fine.
At them. No, I'm just kidding. It's not their fault.
I know, like it's just our curriculum was strange.
Yeah. Well,
it's fine. We're doing it
you're
now.
making up now. Yeah, you're making up for it. So
so after Eleanor tells everything that what happened, like Eleanor tells Marianne everything that happened with Willoughby, Marianne's just like bawling her eyes out, goes up to her room and asks Eleanor to tell their mother everything. And Eleanor's like, great, now I have to do this twice.
yeah, but do you blame Marianne? Like she doesn't want to tell her the whole dang thing.
Oh no. I mean, you also don't want to be like the third person to say something.
I also love that by the end of this book, there's like no secrets between the family anymore. Pretty much everything gets revealed.
Well, then by the end of this book, we just have no Margaret.
Margaret's there.
She's there, but like...
We're not there yet.
I know. Really quick, when they talk about the two sisters being married off, they're like, oh, they're so close. And then everyone just forgets Margaret exists.
She's not forgotten. They talk about her.
But so barely, and she doesn't get married off or anything.
Because she's like 10.
I don't know how old she is.
No, she's really young.
Oh, okay.
She's still young. She's like she's like maybe 15 at that point.
We'll get there and I'll talk more.
Because they say she's not young enough to be married.
Yeah. I mean, she's too young to be married.
Yeah. Scratch that. Reverse it.
So, chapter 47. Eleanor tells Mrs. Dashwood everything and all that happens with Willoughby, and while she pities him, he cannot be returned to his former glory in the eyes of Mrs. Dashwood. Sorry, we're getting to the point in my notes that I wrote in the car, so now like my handwriting's really bad, and I'm just like, what did I say?
She's being very grown up here, and they come to the conclusion that she's actually much better off, that she probably in the long term would not have been happy.
Yeah.
They would end up resenting each other.
That's Mrs. Dashwood said that she kind of pities him. This is Mrs. Dashwood talking.
Right.
But then Marianne says what you said, but
and Eleanor kind of hits it home with, yes, you guys would be in love, but you would have nothing, and for how extravagantly he lives, you would have never been enough.
Yeah. And she basically says that like he would have found fault in whatever place he ended up with. Like right now he's living in a loveless marriage, but he has money. Whereas if he was in Marianne's situation, he'd be in a love-filled marriage, but still have no money. And she would know about him having a child.
Right. So, I mean, I think it just comes down to not that Marianne isn't worth it. It's just that he would never be happy.
Yeah. Because
he's stuck selfish. Right. Because he just wants everything. But you can't because you made a lot of mistakes in your life, so... Yeah,
literally. So, on the following days, Eleanor sees that Marianne has not continued to gain any strength, but she seems to, like, kind of plateaued. So, Margaret has now returned. Welcome back.
Margaret! Star of the book!
The number one most important character.
Dude, you'll like her in the movie. I'm excited.
Okay, because she does not have like any lines at all in the book whatsoever, so it'll be interesting to see her in the movie.
She's cute in the movie.
Oh. So now Mr. Ferris is married and no one told them, and they find out from like their servant, and their
manservant.
Yeah, they're like, "Are you sure?" And he goes, "Yeah, Lucy told me herself that she is now Mrs. Ferris," and Eleanor's bawling her eyes out. Well, she's not. No, Marianne
is freaking out.
Yeah, Marianne faints, falls out of her chair, bawls her eyes out. Eleanor looks like shell shocked. Mrs. Dashwood's like, whoa, whoa, whoa,
And
what's
the
happening?
manservant's like,
He's like, can I go now?
he's like, I've got some gossip.
Yeah, and then Lucy has the goal to say that she'll visit them soon, but Eleanor's like, yeah, I know Edward's never gonna come and visit me. Like, it's just not gonna happen because that would be awkward. And then at this point, Mrs. Dashwood, because like Marianne has to go to her room, she's just broken up. And Mrs. Dashwood also sees that she needs to give Eleanor more attention than she has been, because while Marianne's very outspoken about her feelings, she can tell that Eleanor keeps a lot of it bottled up. And she's like, oh, you're actually more distraught than I realized you were, just because, you know, you keep it so under wraps.
I thought that was a sweet moment of her to
Yeah.
realize that, oh, Eleanor's actually been going through a lot and I didn't know.
Yeah, I thought so too. So, chapter 48, this is when Eleanor kind of realizes that she was still hoping the engagement would somehow fall apart. She like had all of her fingers crossed, all of her
Which
toes
who wouldn't?
crossed.
Who wouldn't just
Yeah,
be like, oh, maybe.
maybe. So, Eleanor's, you know, feeling pretty blue, looks out the window and sees Edward dismounting, and she's like, what's going on? Why are you here? So Edward comes in looking all upset, and everyone's like kind of confused, and they ask if Mrs. Ferris is doing well, and he's like, well, I haven't seen my mom, so I don't know. And she's
Which
like,
I think is great writing.
I know. And then they're like, no, like Mrs. Edward Ferris. And he goes, you mean Mrs. Robert Ferris? And they're like, what do you mean, Mr. Robert
And
Ferris?
Eleanor immediately just starts crying.
Yeah, Eleanor's like, oh, yeah. I'm just imagining she had like one of those moments where it's like you just like fist bump the air, but she's like
She just
also
like is
trying to
yelping.
concentrate. She's just like basically she's like, my man, my man.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, his brother married Lucy, and I was like, I'm sorry, what's happening, what's going on? And like I knew you were, I was trying not to have too many conversations with you outside of this call so we could like talk about all of our feelings, but I was like 3 seconds away from calling you again.
It is a big shock.
Yeah,
Especially when she hears the news of it being Mrs. Ferris. Like,
yeah,
how would there be any foundation for her to be with Robert?
I know, my jaw was on the ground, the literal ground. I was just shocked. And then everyone's basically like, what is going on? And then he gives no clues and goes for a walk. Just like,
he's like, I'm gonna need a minute.
He's like, wait, BRB.
When I read that, I was like, oh, he just like left for the day. That's a weird
I know,
end.
me too. I was like, okay, Edward, like, drop that absolute bomb. And he's like, I'm just gonna let that stew. I'll be back.
He's so
Dramatic.
He's not dramatic. He's just so awkward.
I know. But like, he's so awkward that it ends up being dramatic, you know? Right. He's like, I'm uncomfortable, I'll be back. And then everyone's just like shell shocked, just sitting in their chairs, and they're just like, what do we do? I'm just imagining Eleanor's on the floor crying, you know? And he has to like walk past her.
She's losing it for sure.
Leave. Oh my gosh.
Edward does a quick turnaround though.
Yeah. So chapter 49. The entire reason Edward is there is to ask Eleanor to marry him. And I'm like, what is happening? I am shook. I am shaken. So 3 hours after his arrival, Eleanor and Edward are engaged.
Yep.
And he says that he had long ago stopped loving Lucy and he was miserable.
Which, like, duh.
Yeah, obviously.
Anyone that spent time with her was
miserable.
Shocked once they found out. Like, once Eleanor knows this whole thing about him and Lucy, she can't see it.
Yeah, she's like, he's not gonna have a great time, like.
Right.
So basically, everyone is like happy that Eleanor and Edward are engaged now, but they're like, could you like please tell us what's going on? Because what's happening?
So he has to give the whole account of what the heck happened with Lucy.
So he explains that he kind of had nothing going for him, and he was honestly super bored when he met Lucy.
What a reason to get engaged.
Well, he's like, he had no friends at all. So he convinced himself that basically this friendship was love, because when he went away, he found himself missing Lucy. And he had like no context of understanding that like this is friendship and this is how you care for someone, and not understanding that that's not always love.
He's such a sheltered rich boy.
I know, because it's like they basically gave him nothing to do after he graduated high school, and they're like, okay, you know.
He's like, might as well fall in love with this.
Yeah,
this
he's
girl.
like, basically he just didn't have anything to keep him occupied, so he just kept thinking about Lucy and hanging out with Lucy because it gave him something to do.
And then she writes him, and he's like, oh my gosh, she's not an educated woman. Like,
Yeah.
like he didn't know.
I know. So they get engaged. That all happens because he's like, that's the play. And
Smart.
everyone's trying to figure out how Lucy and Robert could have possibly have gotten married. And Edward said that he literally found out via letter while at Oxford. Like,
that they were married.
He had no idea. He says that she was writing him loving letters the entire time, and then she just randomly is like, basically she says that like she knows that he cares for another person.
Well, she's just like, hey, you don't like me anymore, so I'm gonna do my own thing because he's got the money.
Yeah, she says, your brother has gained my affections entirely, and we could not live without one another, and we have just returned from the altar.
And because of that, we've already been married, so I think that we're not engaged anymore.
Yeah, so, and he says that like the entire time she was writing him affectionate notes, so he was like very shocked. And as soon as he got the letter, within 24 hours, he packs it up and like hightails it over to Barton to go get engaged.
He's like, hey, now I'm going to get me an Eleanor.
Yeah, he's like, all right, sounds good. Okay, anyways, bye. So Mrs. Ferris apparently doesn't know about Robert's marriage still.
That whole thing is a mess. Like, they try to explain how it happened, but it's basically just the fact that he was trying to stop them.
Yeah, so basically he and Lucy started hanging out because he kept going over to Lucy to like talk her out of marrying Edward, and basically tried to confuse her to the point where she would think it's not a good match anymore, and that like Edward's not a great guy. And then Robert started talking about himself a lot, and then Lucy started listening and like also talking about him. And because Robert loves to talk about himself so much, he fell in love with her because she would also talk about him.
Well, and she also knows that he's going to be the richer brother.
Yeah, and Lucy's like, all right, I'll jump ship and go after the richer one.
Right.
And then
she sucks.
Yeah, Eleanor literally says that she thinks that Lucy purposely deceived her into believing that she had married Edward. And I'm like, yeah, she definitely did.
I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, because I didn't think that before I read it.
Well, because she knows what everyone would have thought, and she knows that was Eleanor's servant.
Right.
So, because normally you would say, oh, because she always refers to Edward as Edward. She never refers to him as Mr. Ferris.
Right, that's a good point too.
So
I'm sure it's real. I was just shocked by it. Like, yeah. I mean, I wasn't shocked. I guess I just hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah. And then like Edward basically is like, yeah, now that I kind of know her character, it does not surprise me at all.
I know, I love how he's just all of a sudden like, oh yeah. Yeah. And Lucy steals money from her sister.
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't gotten to where they mention that yet, but I will talk about it when we get there.
Oh, sorry.
You're fine.
I think I went a little out of order in my notes.
It's okay. There's not like much in between it, but like Colonel Brandon comes over, and he came to visit so him and Edward could get better acquainted. Colonel Brandon is even happier that he decided to help Edward because now it helps Eleanor as well, and he like really cares about Eleanor. And then Edward and Colonel Brandon are becoming like really good friends, and I'm like, oh, I love
They're
it.
bros. They're like,
Yeah, they're
oh,
homies.
we both love these sisters that love
Yeah.
each other, so we're all tight.
Yeah, and they're like super awkward and they have a lot in common too. So I just think that like
I think Edward is more awkward.
oh, definitely. But I think they're the kind of bros and homies that could just like hang out silently in a room together and still have like a great time just in each other's presence.
Agreed.
So Mrs. Jennings sent a letter to Eleanor talking mad trash about Lucy. And in this letter, she says that Lucy stole all of Nancy's money, literally all of it. She has no pennies to her name, and did not tell Nancy a single thing when she ran off to marry Robert. And so Nancy showed up at Mrs. Jennings crying, and it's like, yo, here's what happened, which is how Mrs. Jennings found out. Because Mrs. Jennings says that like Lucy was literally there 2 days ago talking about Edward and her marriage.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So Mrs. Jennings gave Nancy some money and sent her over to go be with one of her other relatives to kind of like get her closer to the doctor to hopefully, set her up with something because, Nancy's broke now.
That's terrible.
I know, and it's like, I don't understand why she even did that because Robert is loaded. So why
He's
would you
not loaded anymore, really.
Well, he is because the mom still doesn't know.
Well, true.
So it's like he's still loaded. He's still got
They're just
plenty of
greedy,
money.
though. They're greedy people.
That's true. So John says everyone is wrecked, and Fanny and Mrs. Ferris will never acknowledge Lucy.
So dramatic.
I know.
Such elitists in this family.
And then John says he wants Edward to beg for forgiveness from his mother, and Edward's like, nah, fam, I'm good. Thanks, though.
He's like, I'm just going to go in person and talk to her.
Basically, Eleanor talks him into it and is like, you should probably reconcile with your family and also tell them that we're engaged. And he's like, fine. So he decides that he's going to go to London, talk with them, get this all sorted. And he goes with Colonel Brandon to Delaford first to look at the house, and they like start setting up repairs. So, it'll be done when him and Eleanor move into it. And then he carries on to London. So chapter 50. After some resistance, Mr. Ferris says that says that Edward is her son. And he also reveals that he's exchanged to Eleanor, and Mrs. Ferris like, but like, what about Miss Morton? She just wants someone to marry Miss Morton at this point.
Oh, that part kills me.
Yeah. And then Edward's like, nah. And she basically doesn't want to repeat the same mistake. So she consents to the marriage.
She doesn't give them much money, though, does she? Or at all?
She gives them £10,000, but I think it's a one lump sum. And they said that it's like more than they had ever expected. Like they were expecting nothing. So
it's something.
It's something. So Eleanor and Edward get married in early autumn. And the first month of their marriage, they stay with Colonel Brandon, but then they move in and everyone's visiting them, including Mrs. Ferris. John shows up too and says he really wants Colonel Brandon as a brother, and Eleanor should force
like,
Marianne to be around more.
Marianne should be with Colonel Brandon. Yeah. Like I love that he thinks he's smart enough to like figure these things out, and he's like never around.
I know. He's like, you know what? It actually was never you. Hear me out, Marianne.
No, he still thinks that they should have ended up together. He says he's like kind of disappointed.
And Eleanor's like, great, homie. Like, I'm already married. And
he's like, I guess he's got to marry Marianne.
Yeah. He's like, I just want him to be my brother. And like, Eleanor's like, this is not my problem.
Oh, yeah.
So Mrs. Ferris has also completely forgiven Robert because he is her favorite and also her baby, and no one's surprised by this. And then apparently
she forgives Lucy too, I think. Even.
Yeah. So, this is where they actually say that Robert sought out Lucy to get her to break up. That's where that gets
Oh.
revealed. But oh well, we
I
jumped
don't know
ahead.
why that gets revealed so late. That's weird.
I don't know. So Mrs. Ferris is way nicer to Lucy than to Eleanor because Lucy like sucks up real hard to Mama Ferris. Like something awful.
What happened to like not acknowledging her existence?
I know. It lasted like all of 2 minutes because Robert goes and apologizes, and then like a week later, Lucy goes and like begs forgiveness.
Lucy's not smart.
No.
Well, maybe she's a little smart, but like not in a good way.
Yeah, she's just conniving.
Mm-hmm.
So Marianne marries Colonel Brandon, and she actually truly loves him.
In the last 2 pages of the book.
Know. I was like, we don't get any detail on that. You're just going to tell me that it happens. Like, now I kind of just feel like she was swindled into it. I'm a little nervous.
Well, the movie, I like the way they do it in the movie better. But I think the idea is they spend so much time together. He cares for her so much, and she knows he's a genuine person.
Yeah.
And they were friends that she ends up loving him as much as she loved Willoughby.
Yeah, they say that she does, but I'm like, you make me nervous. I feel like this is a little out of the blue.
That's like one of the major critiques about this book.
Yeah. And then all is happy and well.
Aww.
They basically even say that like the sisters never fight or anything, and they just like hang out all the time because they're literally right next door to each other.
Which is cute.
Yeah, it's very cute.
Yeah.
So that is Sense and Sensibility.
Thoughts, concerns, comments, questions.
Dude, this book was spicier than I thought it was going to be. I'm kind of mad it took me to the year of our Lord 2020 for me to start reading Jane Austen. Like, this is dramatic, and I just feel like I've been snubbed.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I've robbed myself of many years of like great reading material. Next, I've been told I need to read Persuasion. So
also, I haven't read Emma, but the story of Emma is the same as Clueless movie.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I like vaguely remember Clueless. I don't really remember that much about it. Isn't that the one where she marries her stepbrother?
Kind of ex-stepbrother.
Ex-stepbrother. Okay.
It's like it's very loosely based off of Emma.
Okay. Well, I have to read that at some point. But I liked it. I rated it a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads.
What? The Sense and Sensibility?
Sense and Sensibility.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's not not American. It's not a classic for nothing.
I know. It is spice. It's got flavor. It's got drama. Like, very good. It's like there was no chapter that wasn't filled with some sort of drama, I felt like.
Yeah. There were only like a couple chapters where I didn't have that many notes.
Yeah. Like,
and they're quick chapters.
Yeah, it led you astray a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But
she's kind of good at that. I mean, it's really hard to compare apples to oranges, but now you can finally have your moment of comparing Pride and Prejudice.
I literally can't compare them. I was trying to think about this before I even started the call with you, but like these books are so different, and I feel like I did a little bit of a disservice at the beginning comparing the two, because I thought it was going to be like one of those things where they were going to be similar just because the writing is so similar, but it's not. It's not at all.
Right. That's why I was trying to tell you at the beginning. I'm like, you're going to find out that you really can't compare it. It's super different.
Yeah. So I feel like knowing what I know now, it'll be a lot easier for me to go into more
I mean, there's still
books.
Right. There's still, I mean, it's kind of hard because between these two books, there's a dichotomy of like Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, and like I said before, Pride and Prejudice is much more focused on the love story, whereas this one, it wraps up the love story like in the last chapter.
Yeah. They're like, here's drama, and then
there's such like there's like a Frozen moment at the end where it's like sisterly love.
Literally,
it's more important than our husbands.
I know. And then they're like, oh yeah, Margaret's here too, by the way. Oh, and I forgot to say, they literally said the Sir John's happy because Margaret's the age where she's starting to go to balls now. So like the other two sisters are married off, and then Margaret's like, party.
Now they're like, we gotta marry off Margaret, but she ain't old enough yet.
I know, she's like barely 15, and Sir John's like, time for you to find a husband.
I love it though. I love that they've accepted her as like a replacement.
I know, literally. I just think it's so funny because anytime Margaret's mentioned, it's basically like, oh yeah, the two favorite sisters, the best in this world, the close companions. Oh, also Margaret.
And Margaret.
Oh, poor Margaret.
I know. I love it though. I think this book is really good. I think both with I'm excited to talk about the movie with you because I feel like also in Pride and Prejudice that there's some parts where I feel like the movie actually does something like a little bit more interesting than the book, I think.
Yeah.
Like, especially for Pride and Prejudice, because that one's like very, very Hollywood, like a very nice movie, you know?
It's very good.
Whereas Sense and Sensibility is a little bit older of a film. And I don't think it really strays from the plot of the book all that much. Like, I actually think that the way that they condense some of it makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see what you think.
Yeah, I'm excited. So that's all we have on this episode of Sense and Sensibility. We will be watching the movie next time. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you for joining me, Allison. Where can the people of the internet find you on your one social media that you share?
It's because I don't know what else people would possibly follow me on. But my Instagram handle is @_Allison_Eason_.
Yeah.
Just rolls off the tongue.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, that's all we have. And we will be joining you in the next episode for the movie version with apparently Alan Rickman and the entire cast of Harry Potter, from my understanding of it.
Plus Hugh Laurie.
Yeah, it'll be great. We'll have a great time. So we will see you in that episode. Bye. Thank you all so very much for listening to this episode of the Barely Bookish podcast. As I mentioned, next week we will be talking about the movie. So if you want to go ahead and watch that, it's the one with Alan Rickman. I still don't know what year it is. I forgot. I'm sorry. But it's the Alan Rickman movie. So, of Sense and Sensibility. And then if you want to start reading The Great Gatsby so that you'll be ready for that, please do. And then we'll talk about it. And it's going to be a whole lot of fun. I'm very excited, and we will have one of my friends on for that movie or that book. So I'm sure you guys will really, really love it. It's going to be really great, and I can't wait to talk about it with you all. And as I also mentioned, we will be doing the Barely Book Club book for this next 8 weeks will be The Priory of the Orange Tree. So if you want to read that with us, please do. And it's barelybookish.com/connect, and it'll have the Discord link for you and everything. And I'm sure you guys will love it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited because I've been nervous to read it myself, and I think this is a great way to do it. But that's kind of all I got for you guys. Thank you all so much for hanging out. Our logo was designed by my sibling Sarah. Our theme song is by Raphael Crux. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one, in which we will discuss every person from Harry Potter that's in Sense and Sensibility, because that's what we do here. Yeah. All right. Bye.